Singlemom saved a mafia boss on the brink of death. What happened next shocked the entire city. She should have walked away. But when Heather dragged the wounded man out of the fire, his men arrived, guns raised, screaming, "Who sent you?" Only when they saw his face did their voices break. She had just saved the mafia kingpin they all thought was dead. Before we begin, tap like, share, and subscribe so you never miss stories like this. Your support keeps them coming. Thank you. A woman runs through empty streets, grocery bag clutched against her chest, a sleeping child strapped to her back. Thunder cracks overhead. The rain is biblical, the kind that erases the world in sheets of gray. Then the night explodes. An SUV flips end over end in the middle of the intersection ahead, sparks showering across wet pavement. The vehicle lands upside down with a metallic scream. Flames erupt from the engine block, hungry and roaring. Heather Morgan freezes. Every muscle in her body screams, "Run the other way." But then she hears it. A groan. Low. Desperate. A man drags himself upright against a brick wall 20 feet from the wreckage, rain washing blood down his face in pink rivers. His suit is torn. His breathing rattles. He looks directly at her. His voice cracks. "Don't let me die." Heather drops her groceries. Her hands shake. But she moves toward him anyway. 1 hour later. St. Vincent's Hospital. Emergency wing. A police lieutenant stands outside the ICU, phone pressed to his ear, voice low and urgent. "I don't care what strings you have to pull. I need to know who brought him in." Inside the room, surrounded by machines and armed guards, a man lies unconscious. His chest rises and falls in shallow rhythm. And 4 drips steadily. The monitors beep in hypnotic patterns. On the bedside table, a charred briefcase. A Patek Philippe watch worth more than most people's cars. A blood-stained business card with a single name embossed in gold. Maurilio Lucchesi. The lieutenant stares at the trauma surgeon, hands trembling. Who stabilized him before the ambulance arrived? The surgeon shakes her head, studying the field dressing on the patient's abdomen. Whoever it was knew what they were doing. This is pressure point precision. She kept him from bleeding out. She. Witnesses said a woman. Soaked to the bone. Had a kid on her back. She kept him conscious until the fire department arrived, then vanished before anyone could ask her name. The lieutenant looks back at the man in the bed. The most feared crime boss in the city. And someone saved him. Someone who had no idea what she'd just done. Heather Morgan is 29 years old. Single mother. Waitress at Marco's Diner on 5th. Double shifts 6 days a week because rent doesn't pay itself and daycare isn't cheap. She wakes up at 5:30 every morning in a cramped 1-bedroom apartment on the south side. The kind of place where the radiator clangs, the neighbors argue through thin walls, and the elevator breaks down twice a month. In the kitchen, she packs lunch for her daughter, Araya. The little girl is 5, bright eyes, endless questions, too smart for her own good. "Mama, why do you have a bruise on your arm?" Heather glances down. She does, from carrying Araya and the groceries in the rain last night. She doesn't remember hitting anything. Adrenaline does that. Just clumsy, baby. Eat your cereal. The truth is simpler than anyone would guess. Heather Morgan isn't a hero. She's not brave. She's not special. She's just someone who couldn't walk away. She was raised by a nurse, her mother Eleanor, who worked night shifts at County General for 30 years. Eleanor had one rule she drilled into Heather's head. You don't leave people bleeding in the street. Ever. I don't care who they are. Heather's father left when she was 6. Her mother raised her alone, the same way Heather is raising Araya now. Paycheck to paycheck. Hope to hope. Eleanor died 2 years ago. Heart attack in the hospital parking lot after a 16-hour shift. Heather still hears her voice sometimes. Especially on nights like last night. Don't leave people bleeding in the street. So she didn't. It was 11:47 p.m. when Heather left the late-night bodega on 7th Avenue. Rain hammered the pavement. The streets were empty. Most people smart enough to stay inside during a storm like this. But Heather's shift had run late, and Araya needed milk for breakfast. She hurried down the sidewalk, grocery bag in one arm, Araya asleep in the carrier on her back. Thunder rumbled overhead. Lightning split the sky. Then the world turned orange. The explosion was so loud it felt physical, a pressure wave that knocked Heather back a step. She spun around and saw the SUV flipping through the air like a toy, flames already chasing it. It crashed upside down 50 yards away. Fire bloomed from the engine. Smoke billowed into the rain. Heather's first instinct: protect Araya. She turned to run the other direction, toward safety, toward home, toward the quiet life that didn't involve explosions and death. But then she heard the groan. And she remembered her mother's voice. Don't walk away. Heather ran toward the wreckage, one hand cradling Araya's head to keep her asleep. The heat was overwhelming. Glass littered the street. The smell of gasoline and burning rubber choked the air. Then she saw him, slumped against the brick wall, blood running from a dozen cuts, suit torn open to reveal a deep laceration across his ribs. Don't let me die. Heather dropped the grocery bag. Her hands were already moving, ripping off her jacket, pressing it against the worst of the bleeding. What's your name? She demanded, forcing him to focus on her face instead of the fire. Maori. Leo. Okay, Maurilio. I'm Heather. You're going to look at me and stay awake. Understand? He nodded weakly. She checked his pulse, thready, fast, dangerously weak. His breathing was shallow. She needed to keep him conscious, keep him talking, keep his body from shutting down. Tell me where it hurts most. Everywhere. Good. That means you're still feeling things. Stay with me. Behind them, the SUV's fuel tank ignited with a secondary explosion. The fireball shot 30 feet into the air. Heat washed over them. Heather threw herself over Maurilio, shielding him from flying debris. Glass rained down. Metal shrapnel embedded in the brick wall inches from their heads. When the noise subsided, Heather looked down. Maurilio was staring at her with something between confusion and awe. You're insane, he whispered. I get that a lot, she muttered, checking his wound again. Still bleeding, but slower. The pressure was working. Maurilio's eyes started to drift closed. Hey! Heather grabbed his face, forcing eye contact. Don't you dare. You have people who need you, right? Someone waiting for you. He tried to smile. It came out as a grimace. Not anymore. Well, I need you to stay awake for the next 5 minutes. Can you do that for me? Why are you helping? Heather paused. In the distance, sirens wailed. Help was coming. Because someone has to, she said simply. The fire trucks arrived 3 minutes later. Paramedics swarmed the scene. Heather stood back, letting the professionals take over, her hands slick with someone else's blood. One of the EMTs, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, looked at the field dressing, then at Heather. You did this. I just kept pressure on it. You saved his life. Heather glanced at Maurilio being loaded onto a stretcher, oxygen mask over his face, for already in his arm. He was unconscious now, but stable. The EMT touched her shoulder. We're going to need a statement. Can you wait? But Heather was already backing away into the crowd of onlookers. Araya was waking up on her back, starting to fuss. She needed to get her daughter home, away from the chaos, back to their quiet life. I have to go, Heather said. And she disappeared into the rain before anyone could stop her. Meanwhile, Heather tried to return to her normal life. She went back to her shifts at the diner, smiled at customers, picked up Araya from daycare, made mac and cheese for dinner, read bedtime stories. She didn't watch the news, didn't check social media. Didn't know that her face was plastered across every major outlet in the city. She certainly didn't know that the man she'd saved was the head of the most powerful crime family in New York. But she was about to find out. Because 2 days later, when she came home from work and found 2 men in expensive suits waiting outside her apartment building, everything would change. Maurizio Lucchese had come to settle his debt. And Heather Morgan's quiet, invisible life was about to become the most talked about story in the city. Heather first saw his face on the morning news. She was pouring cereal for Araya, half asleep, the television murmuring in the background. Then she heard the words that made her freeze mid-pour. The victim has been identified as Maurizio Lucchese, alleged head of the notorious Lucchese crime family. The cereal box slipped from her hands. Cheerios scattered across the counter. On screen, they were showing footage of the explosion. Her explosion. The one she'd walked away from 3 days ago thinking she'd saved some businessman, some innocent victim of a horrible accident. The anchor continued, Lucchese, 47, has long been suspected of controlling a vast criminal empire spanning drug trafficking, money laundering, and racketeering. The FBI has been investigating his organization for over a decade, though no charges have ever stuck. Sources say this attack was orchestrated from within his own organization. Heather's hands trembled. She grabbed the remote and turned up the volume. Mystery woman who saved his life has sparked intense speculation. Security footage shows an unidentified female keeping Lucchese alive until first responders arrived. Police are asking anyone with information about her identity to come forward immediately. Then they played it. The grainy security camera footage from across the street. Heather watched herself kneel beside him, press her jacket against his wound, grab his face to keep him conscious. The firelight made everything look theatrical, almost unreal. But it was real. She'd done that. She'd saved a mafia boss. Mama. Araya tugged on her sleeve. Why are you shaking? Heather forced herself to breathe. I'm fine, baby. Just cold. She wasn't cold. She was terrified. By noon, the story had metastasized. Every news outlet, every social media platform, every corner of the internet was obsessed with one question. Who is the woman who saved Maurizio Lucchese? Heather made it to work, but her mind was elsewhere. At Marco's diner, the television behind the counter played nothing but coverage of the explosion. Customers couldn't stop talking about it. Can you believe someone actually helped that monster? I heard she was working for a rival family. Maybe she didn't know who he was. Heather kept her head down, refilled coffee cups, and prayed no one would recognize her face from the blurry footage. By the time her shift ended, police had cordoned off the entire block where the explosion happened. News vans lined the street. Reporters interviewed anyone who'd walked past that night. Heather took the long way home, avoiding cameras, pulling her hood up despite the afternoon heat. When she reached her apartment building, her landlord was waiting in the lobby. Mr. Castellano was 65, perpetually irritated, and obsessed with property values. He jabbed a finger toward the street where an unmarked police car sat idling. You see that? That's the third one today. Police asking questions about explosion witnesses. About some woman with a kid. Heather's stomach dropped. I don't know what. I don't care what you know or don't know. His voice was hard. If the cops keep sniffing around this building, if reporters start camping outside, if any of this Lucchese family drama follows you here, you're out. Understand? I got other tenants to think about. Mr. Castellano, I haven't done anything wrong. Then why are the police asking questions? He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You got till the end of the month. One more incident, one more squad car, and I'm filing eviction papers. This is a respectable building. He walked away before she could respond. Heather stood frozen in the lobby, Araya's hand in hers, feeling the walls closing in. She hadn't done anything wrong. She'd saved a dying man. That was it. That was all. But the city didn't care about her intentions. It only cared about the narrative. And right now, The narrative was that she'd saved the devil himself. Uptown, in the private recovery wing of Mount Sinai Hospital, Murillo Lucchese sat up in bed despite his doctor's protests. His ribs screamed with every breath. The stitches across his abdomen pulled tight. But he needed to be upright, needed to be present when his people arrived with answers. Vincent entered first, followed by 3 other lieutenants. Their faces told him everything. They'd found nothing. "Boss," Vincent began carefully, "we've ID'd her. Heather Morgan. 29. Single mother. Works at a diner in Midtown. Lives in Harlem. No criminal record. No connections to any families. She's..." "Nobody," Murillo finished, his voice rough but sharp. "She's nobody. That's what's strange, boss. She's exactly nobody. Waitress. Broke. Barely making rent. Why would she save me?" Murillo's eyes fixed on Vincent. "Because most people in this city are too scared or too smart to get involved." But she wasn't. The lieutenants exchanged glances. One of them, Carlo, spoke up hesitantly. "Some people are saying, maybe she was planted. Maybe she knew you'd be there. Maybe." "Then she's the worst assassin in history," Murillo cut him off. "She saved my life, Carlo. Risked her own. Disappeared without asking for payment, protection, or even a thank you." He paused, fingers drumming against the bed rail. "No. She wasn't sent by anyone. Which makes her more dangerous than any hitman. Dangerous. To the people who tried to kill me." Murillo's jaw tightened. "They planned my death perfectly. Isolated location, no witnesses, guaranteed kill. And one random woman with a conscience ruined everything." He looked at each man in turn. "She's in danger now. Find her. Protect her. And bring her to me. I owe her a debt." Vincent nodded slowly. "And if she doesn't want to be found?" Murillo picked up the silver bracelet from his bedside table, running his thumb over the inscription. "Don't walk away." "She will," he said quietly. "Because I'm not going to give her a choice." Comment, "I stand for justice, if you're not siding with the corrupt system that lets rich criminals walk free." They were waiting when Heather got home. 2 men in suits that probably cost more than her monthly rent stood outside her apartment building, hands folded, faces expressionless. One was tall and broad-shouldered, the other leaner but no less intimidating. They weren't trying to blend in. They wanted to be seen. Heather's first instinct was to run. Her second was to protect Araya. She tightened her grip on her daughter's hand and tried to walk past them. The tall one stepped into her path. "Miss Morgan." Not a question. A statement. "Mr. Lucchese would like to speak with you." Her blood turned to ice. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do." The leaner one gestured to a black SUV idling at the curb. "It won't take long. Your daughter will be safe. We have a car seat already installed." Heather's mind raced. They knew her name. They knew about Araya. They'd come prepared. Which meant refusing wasn't really an option. "And if I say no?" The tall one's expression didn't change. "Mr. Lucchese is not a man accustomed to hearing no. But he's not here to threaten you, Miss Morgan. He's here to thank you." Heather looked down at Araya, who was staring up at the men with wide, curious eyes. Then she looked at the SUV, gleaming black, tinted windows, the engine purring like a predator. She thought about her mother's voice. "Don't walk away." But maybe, just this once, she should have. "Fine," she said quietly. "But if anything happens to my daughter..." "Nothing will happen to either of you," the tall one assured her. "You have Mr. Lucchese's word. The word of a mafia boss." Heather wasn't sure that was worth much. But she didn't have a choice. They drove for 20 minutes through parts of Manhattan Heather rarely saw, the kind of neighborhoods where doormen wore suits and buildings had names instead of numbers. Eventually, they pulled into an underground garage beneath a high-rise overlooking Central Park. The elevator required a key card. It rose silently to the 42nd floor. Heather held Araya close, her heart hammering against her ribs. The elevator opened directly into a penthouse. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Manhattan skyline. The furniture was minimalist, expensive, untouchable. And standing in the center of the room, leaning heavily on a cane, an oxygen cannula beneath his nose, was Murillo Lucchese. He looked different than he had in the rain. Older, paler. But his eyes, sharp, dark, calculating, were exactly the same. Miss Morgan. His voice was rough but steady. Thank you for coming. Heather didn't move. I didn't really have a choice. No, he admitted. You didn't. But I promise you're safe here. Both of you. His gaze dropped to Araya, and something in his expression softened. What's your name, little one? Araya buried her face in Heather's leg, suddenly shy. Araya, Heather answered for her. And we're not staying long. Murillo gestured to a chair. Please. Sit. I owe you an explanation. Against her better judgment, Heather sat on the edge of the couch, Araya curled in her lap. One of the suited men brought them water. Heather didn't touch hers. Murillo lowered himself into a chair across from them, wincing as he moved. 3 nights ago, you saved my life. Do you know who I am? I do now. Then you know what that means. He paused, studying her face. You saved the head of the Lucchese family. Whether you intended to or not, you've inserted yourself into something very dangerous. I didn't insert myself into anything, Heather said sharply. I helped a dying man. That's it. And that simple act of mercy complicated someone's very expensive assassination attempt. Murillo leaned forward slightly. The explosion wasn't an accident, Miss Morgan. My SUV was rigged. The route was compromised. Someone close to me wanted me dead. Heather's stomach twisted. Then why are you telling me this? Because by saving me, you became a target. His voice was matter-of-fact, almost gentle. Whoever ordered the hit now knows you exist. They know your face. They know you kept me alive long enough to identify them. But I don't know anything. They don't know that. Murillo's eyes held hers. Which is why I'm here. You saved my life. Now let me save yours. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. Thick. Heavy. He set it on the coffee table between them. $50,000. Enough to relocate. New city, new identity, clean start for you and Araya. Heather stared at the envelope like it was a live grenade. I don't want your money. Murillo blinked. Excuse me. I said I don't want it. She stood, pulling Araya up with her. I didn't save you for a reward. I didn't save you because of who you are or what you could give me. I saved you because you were dying and I couldn't walk away. That's it. That's the whole story. For a long moment, Murillo just stared at her. Then slowly, he began to laugh. A rough, painful sound that made him clutch his ribs. You're serious. Completely. Do you have any idea how rare that is? He shook his head in disbelief. In my world, everyone wants something. Everyone has an angle. And you? He gestured at her. You risk your life, save mine, and refuse payment. I don't need your money. I need you to leave me alone. I can't do that. Murillo's expression hardened. Whether you accept my help or not, you're in danger now. My enemies will come for you. And when they do, then I'll call the police. The police. He almost smiled. Miss Morgan, half the NYPD is on someone's payroll. Mine, my rivals, the Russians, the Irish. You think they'll protect you? Heather felt the walls closing in again. She thought about Mr. Castellano's threat. The reporters outside her building. The police asking questions. Murillo stood, moving slowly, pain evident in every motion. He picked up the envelope and held it out to her. Please. Take it. Not as payment. As protection. Let me make sure you and Araya stay safe. Heather looked at the envelope. At Murillo. At the men standing silently by the elevator. She thought about her mother's words. You don't leave people bleeding in the street. But nobody had warned her what happened after you saved them. I don't trust you, she said finally. Smart. Murillo's lips quirked. But right now, I'm the only person in this city who has a reason to keep you alive. My enemies want you dead. The police want to use you. But me. He pressed the envelope into her hands. I just want to say thank you. Heather looked down at Araya, who had fallen asleep against her shoulder, oblivious to everything. She took the envelope. This doesn't mean I owe you anything. No, Murillo agreed. It means I owe you everything. Hit like if you can't stand traitors. Only snakes would scroll past. The strange cars started appearing 2 days after Heather met Murillo. First, a black sedan with tinted windows parked across from her building for 6 hours. Then a grey SUV idling at the corner when she walked Araya to school. Different vehicles. Different drivers. But all watching. Heather tried to convince herself it was paranoia. That saving Murillo's life hadn't actually painted a target on her back. That the $50,000 hidden in her closet didn't mean she'd made a deal with the devil. But paranoia felt a lot like survival instinct. And her instincts were screaming. On Wednesday morning, she found her mailbox hanging open, the small lock twisted and broken. Nothing was taken. Her bills were still there, the junk mail, Araya's daycare newsletter. But someone had been through it. Someone wanted her to know they could reach her any time they wanted. Heather reported it to Mr. Castellano. He barely looked up from his newspaper. Probably kids, he muttered. I'll add it to the repair list. Someone is watching my apartment. Then maybe you should move. He finally looked at her, his expression cold. Like I said, Miss Morgan. End of the month. She wanted to scream. Wanted to tell him she hadn't asked for any of this. But what good would it do? In his eyes, she was the problem. Not the men watching her building. Not whoever had broken into her mailbox. Her. That afternoon, someone knocked on her door while she was making lunch. Heather froze, knife in hand, heart hammering. Through the peephole, she saw 2 men in suits. But these weren't the same men from before. These wore Murillo's colors, expensive tailoring, earpieces, the kind of stillness that came from military training. She opened the door a crack, chain still in place. What do you want? Mr. Lucchese is downstairs, the taller one said. He'd like to visit. If you're comfortable with that. I'm not. He brought gifts for your daughter. Heather glanced back at Araya, who was coloring at the kitchen table, completely oblivious. She thought about the broken mailbox. The watching cars. The way her skin crawled every time she walked outside. 5 minutes, she said finally. That's it. Murillo climbed the stairs slowly, still leaning on his cane, flanked by his security. He looked stronger than he had in the penthouse, color returning to his face, breathing easier without the oxygen. When Araya saw him, she didn't hide like before. Instead, she jumped up from her chair, eyes wide with excitement. You're the man Mama saved. Murillo stopped, something unreadable crossing his face. Then he smiled, a real smile, not the calculated one Heather had seen in the penthouse. I am, he said gently, kneeling to her level despite the obvious pain it caused. And you must be Araya. Your mama told me about you. Did she tell you I'm learning to read? She didn't. That's very impressive. I can show you. Araya grabbed his hand, his scarred, blood-stained, probably killed someone hand, and pulled him toward her books. Heather watched, frozen, as the most dangerous man in New York City sat cross-legged on her worn carpet while her 5-year-old daughter read him a picture book about dinosaurs. She's beautiful, Murillo said quietly when Araya ran to get more books. Smart too. You're doing a good job. Don't, Heather warned. Don't pretend this is a friendly visit. It's not entirely friendly. He stood slowly, his expression hardening. The surveillance outside your building, that's not me. My men are watching them. Someone else is looking for you. Heather's blood ran cold. Who? I'm still figuring that out. But whoever ordered the hit on me is tying up loose ends. And you, Miss Morgan, are a loose end. Before she could respond, Araya returned with an armful of books and a box of crayons. Mr. Mowry, do you like to color? Murillo's severe expression melted instantly. I used to. When I was your age. Then you can color with me. She handed him a purple crayon and pointed to a blank page in her coloring book. You do this page. I'll do this one. And just like that, Murillo Lucchese, crime boss, suspected killer, feared by half the city, sat at Heather's tiny kitchen table and colored a picture of a unicorn. Heather didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The newspapers picked up the story 2 days later. Someone had leaked photos. Murillo entering Heather's building, his security detail stationed outside, the way her landlord paled when he saw who was visiting. The headline in the New York Post screamed, "The woman who saved the devil. Single mom becomes mafia boss's guardian angel." The article was worse. Speculation about their relationship. Theories about whether she was working for him. Questions about why a waitress would risk her life for a criminal. At Marco's diner, customers stared, whispered. Some left without ordering. By Friday, Heather's tips had dried up completely. People are nervous, her manager explained, not meeting her eyes. Maybe you should take some time off. Let this blow over. I need this job. I know. But I also need customers. Heather left work early, hands shaking with rage and fear and helplessness. She picked up Araya from daycare and started the 8-block walk home, head down, hood up, trying to be invisible. She didn't notice the man following them until they were 3 blocks from her building. He was young, maybe 25, wearing a dark hoodie and keeping pace exactly 15 feet behind them. When Heather sped up, he sped up. When she slowed down, so did he. Her heart began to race. She pulled Araya closer. Mama, you're hurting my hand. I know, baby. We need to walk faster. Why? Because there's a man with a gun following us, Heather thought. Because I saved the wrong person and now we're going to die for it. She turned down a side street, hoping to lose him. He followed. She started running. He ran too. Heather heard his footsteps getting closer, heard Araya crying, heard her own breath coming in panicked gasps. Then a black SUV screeched around the corner, cutting between them and the gunman. 2 of Murillo's men jumped out, weapons drawn but not aimed. The gunman froze, hands raised, then bolted in the opposite direction. One of the suited men approached Heather carefully. You're safe now, Miss Morgan. Heather collapsed against the brick wall, pulling Araya into her arms, her whole body shaking. Who was that? We'll find out. He gestured to the SUV. Let us take you home. I can walk. With respect, ma'am, no you can't. Not anymore. He was right. She couldn't. Because somewhere in this city, someone wanted her dead. And the only thing standing between her and a bullet was the man she'd saved from bleeding out in the rain. If you hate bullies who prey on single moms, hit subscribe. Only heartless people ignore threats like this. Murillo arrived at 11:47 p.m. without warning. Heather opened the door to find him standing in the hallway, flanked by only one guard instead of his usual detail. He looked exhausted, shadows under his eyes, favoring his injured side, tension carved into every line of his face. We need to talk, he said quietly. May I come in? Heather should have said no. Should have closed the door, locked it, pretended she'd never saved his life. But something in his expression stopped her. Something urgent and dangerous. Araya's asleep. I know. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't important. She let him in. His guard remained in the hallway, positioned by the stairs. Murillo moved to the window, carefully pulling the curtain aside to look down at the street. 3 black SUVs were parked at strategic points around the building. His men. Protection that had become her prison. "I know who betrayed me," he said without turning around. "My cousin. Vincent's been gathering evidence, financial records, intercepted communications, witness testimony. It's him." "Then why are you here instead of?" "Because he knows I know." Murillo finally faced her. "Which means he's desperate. And desperate men do desperate things." The lights went out. Not just in Heather's apartment. The entire building plunged into darkness. Emergency lighting flickered on in the hallway for a moment, then died. Murillo moved instantly, grabbing Heather's arm. "Get Araya. Now." "What's happening?" Gunfire erupted from below. 3 sharp cracks, then sustained automatic fire. Screaming. Glass shattering. The sound of boots pounding up the stairs. Heather's training kicked in, not military training, not tactical training, but the primal instinct of a mother protecting her child. She ran to Araya's room, scooped her sleeping daughter out of bed, and headed for the bathroom. "Mama." Araya's voice was groggy, confused. "Why is it dark? We're playing hide and seek, baby." Heather's voice shook but stayed calm. "You need to hide in the bathtub and be very, very quiet. Can you do that for Mama?" "Is it because of the bad men?" Heather's heart shattered. 5 years old. No child should have to ask that question. "Yes, baby. But Mama won't let them hurt you. I promise." She wrapped Araya in blankets, placed her in the bathtub, and locked the bathroom door from the outside. It wouldn't hold against bullets, but it might by seconds. Seconds could mean survival. When she returned to the living room, Murillo was on his phone, voice tight with controlled fury. "Where the hell are my men? 3 SUVs and none of you saw them coming." The response made him go pale. "All dead," he said to Heather. "Vincent's cousin brought an army." More gunfire below. Closer now. 4th floor. Maybe 3rd. Heather grabbed her phone and dialed 911, hands trembling so badly she almost dropped it. "911, what's your emergency?" "There are armed men attacking my building. Multiple shooters. We need help now." 447, West 125th Street, apartment 6B. "Ma'am, we're showing that address as connected to an active organized crime investigation. Units are not authorized to intervene in mafia conflicts." "There's a child here," Heather screamed. "A 5-year-old girl who has nothing to do with any of this." "Ma'am, I understand your distress, but our officer's safety." Heather threw the phone across the room. It shattered against the wall. Murillo stared at her, something like recognition dawning in his eyes. "They're not coming. Then we fight. You don't know how. I know how to not die." Heather moved to the kitchen, yanking open drawers. She grabbed the largest knife, an 8-inch chef's blade her mother had given her. Then she grabbed 2 more. "And I know how to make it expensive." Footsteps in the hallway now. Heavy boots. Multiple sets. Someone tried her doorknob. Murillo positioned himself behind the couch, gun drawn despite his injuries. "Heather, get in the bathroom with Araya." "No." She grabbed a chair and wedged it under the door handle. Then she shoved the small dining table against the door. It wouldn't hold long, but every second mattered. "You can barely stand. You need me. I'm trying to protect you." "You are in my home," Heather cut him off, her voice steel. "Threatening my daughter. So shut up and tell me how to keep us alive." For a moment, Murillo just stared at her, this waitress from Harlem holding a kitchen knife like a weapon, fear and fury burning in equal measure. Then he smiled. Actually smiled. "The door's our choke point. They have to come through single file. I'll take the first one. You take anyone who gets past me." The door exploded inward. The chair splintered. The table scraped across the floor. The first gunman stepped through, assault rifle raised. Murillo fired twice. The man dropped. The second gunman tried to push past his fallen comrade. Heather lunged from beside the door, driving the kitchen knife up under his vest where body armor doesn't cover. He screamed, fell backward into the hallway. Jesus Christ, Murillo breathed. Where did you learn? I didn't. Heather grabbed the fallen gunman's rifle, though she had no idea how to use it. How many more? Before Murillo could answer, someone threw a flashbang through the doorway. The explosion of light and sound turned the world white and screaming. Heather couldn't see, couldn't hear. But she could feel, someone grabbing her arm, dragging her backward. She fought blindly, knife slashing, connecting with something solid. A grunt of pain. The grip released. Her vision cleared in fragments. Murillo on the floor, bleeding from a new wound. 2 more gunmen in her apartment. And Heather standing between them and the bathroom where her daughter was hiding. Last chance, the lead gunman said. Walk away. This isn't your fight. Heather gripped her knife tighter, positioning herself in front of the bathroom door. Everything involving my daughter is my fight. The gunman raised his weapon. And the windows exploded inward as Murillo's reinforcements crashed through on rappel lines. Automatic fire filling the apartment with thunder and smoke. When the shooting stopped, 4 bodies lay on Heather's floor. Murillo was being dragged to safety by his men. And Heather was still standing in front of the bathroom door, knife in hand, covered in blood that wasn't hers. Vincent pushed through the chaos, checking Murillo's wounds. Boss, we need to move you. Check on the woman first, Murillo gasped. And her daughter. Heather unlocked the bathroom door with shaking hands. Araya sat in the bathtub, hands over her ears, tears streaming down her face but alive. Alive. It's okay, baby. It's over. You're safe. Murillo watched from where his men had propped him against the wall, clutching his bleeding side. He'd been saved twice now. Once from fire. Once from bullets. Both times by the same woman. She's not a civilian anymore, Vincent said quietly. She's a combatant. She killed 2 of them. No. Murillo's voice was firm despite his pain. She's a mother who protected her child. There's a difference. But watching Heather hold her daughter while standing in the wreckage of her demolished apartment, Murillo knew the truth. She'd become something the city had never seen before. A single mother who'd gone to war with the Mafia. And survived. Comment, protect the innocent. If you believe police shouldn't abandon civilians. Only cowards think otherwise. They moved Heather and Araya to a safe house in Brooklyn before sunrise. The building was nondescript, a renovated warehouse in Red Hook with reinforced doors, bulletproof windows, and enough security to guard a head of state. Murillo's men swept every room twice before allowing them inside. Heather carried a sleeping Araya through the door, still wearing clothes stained with blood from the siege. She hadn't spoken since they left her destroyed apartment. Hadn't cried. Hadn't broken down. She was running on autopilot, the way trauma victims do when their nervous system decides feeling anything would be fatal. A woman in her 50s, soft-faced, maternal, nothing like the hardened men surrounding them, took Araya gently from Heather's arms. I'm Rosa, she said quietly. I'll get her cleaned up and into bed. You have my word she'll be safe. Heather wanted to protest, wanted to keep her daughter close, but her body had other ideas. Her knees buckled. Vincent caught her before she hit the floor. Easy, he murmured. You're in shock. Let us help. They put her in a bedroom on the 2nd floor. Someone brought clean clothes. Someone else brought food she couldn't eat. Through the walls, she could hear men speaking in urgent Italian, phones ringing constantly, the controlled chaos of an organization at war with itself. She should have been terrified. Should have been planning escape routes. Instead, she fell asleep sitting upright against the headboard, kitchen knife still clutched in her hand. When she woke, Murillo was sitting in the chair across from her bed. Dawn light filtered through the reinforced windows. He looked older than he had 12 hours ago, gray creeping through his temples, pain carved deep into his face. "Your daughter is with Rosa," he said before Heather could ask. "She's safe. Federal playing with toys we brought. She thinks this is an adventure." "It's not." "No, it's not." Murillo leaned forward, wincing. His new bandages were already spotted with blood. "I owe you the truth. All of it. You owe me a normal life. But I don't think I'm getting that back, am I?" "No, you're not." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "The man who tried to kill me, who tried to kill us last night, is my cousin, Alessandro Lucchesi. We grew up together. I trusted him with everything. Family betraying family. How original." Murillo ignored the barb. "It wasn't just about killing me. That was phase 1. Phase 2 was eliminating everyone loyal to me. Vincent, my uncle Marco, 3 coppos who've been with us for decades. He planned to wipe out an entire generation of leadership in one night." Heather felt ice spread through her chest. How many people? 17. All told. Including children. Murillo's voice went flat. He was going to kill the children to prevent future revenge. That's how thorough he was. Jesus Christ. The explosion that night. My SUV. I wasn't supposed to be alone. My convoy was supposed to include Vincent, Marco, and their families. 23 people in 4 vehicles. All rigged to explode simultaneously. Heather's mind reeled. Then why were you alone? Last-minute change. Marco's daughter got sick. We postponed the meeting. Murillo's hands clenched into fists. Pure chance. Dumb luck. The only reason any of us are alive is because a 6-year-old caught the flu. And me. And you. His eyes met hers. Alessandro's plan required my death to go unnoticed. A simple explosion, no survivors, no witnesses. But you pulled me out. Kept me alive. Gave me time to realize it wasn't an accident. He stood slowly, moving to the window. You didn't just save my life, Heather. You saved 17 others. You prevented a massacre that would have started a war across 5 boroughs. Heather absorbed this in silence. She'd saved a mafia boss. Prevented a mafia war. Killed 2 men with her own hands. 3 weeks ago, her biggest problem was making rent. Why are you telling me this? Because downstairs right now, my advisors are debating whether you're a liability. Whether the safest course of action is to... He stopped. Kill me. Heather's voice was steady. Almost calm. They want to kill me because I know too much. Some of them, yes. And you. Murillo turned from the window, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw something raw in his expression. Guilt. Shame. Genuine emotion breaking through decades of calculated control. I would die first. Before Heather could respond, raised voices erupted from downstairs. She followed Murillo to the landing, where they could see into the main room below. 8 men sat around a conference table. Maps. Phones. Weapons. Vincent stood at the head, pointing at documents while others argued in rapid Italian. One voice rose above the others. A heavy-set man in his 60s with a scar across his jaw. She's a civilian who's killed our men, seen our faces, knows our locations. She's a walking FBI case. We should have handled this the first night. She saved the boss's life, Vincent countered. And now she's a risk. The cousin knows she exists. Every family in New York knows she exists. She's a target and a liability. The girl too. Clean break. Make it look like an accident. Heather's blood turned to ice. The girl too. Araya. She started down the stairs. Murillo grabbed her arm. Wait. They're talking about killing my daughter. I won't let them. But Heather was already moving, maternal fury overriding survival instinct. She burst into the conference room, and 8 of New York's most dangerous men turned to stare at her. "You want to kill a 5-year-old girl," she said, voice shaking with rage, "because your family drama got out of control?" The scarred man stood. "This doesn't concern you." "The hell it doesn't. You're talking about murdering my child because you're all too incompetent to handle your own problems without dragging innocent people into them." "Watch your mouth." "Or what?" Heather stepped closer. "You'll kill me. Get in line. Your cousin already tried. Twice." The room fell silent. Then Murillo's voice cut through the tension, cold and absolute. "Gentlemen, let me be very clear." He moved to stand beside Heather. "This woman has saved my life twice. She's killed to protect me, bled for me, risked everything for me. And you want to repay that loyalty with murder? Boss, we're trying to protect the family." "She's family now." Murillo's tone was final. "Anyone who touches her, anyone who even looks at her daughter the wrong way, answers to me personally. Not Vincent. Not the council. Me. And I promise you," his eyes swept the room, "I will make it slow." The silence that followed was absolute. The scarred man sat down. The others followed. Vincent cleared his throat. "Then we protect them both. Add them to the security detail. Full protection." "No," Heather said. Everyone turned to stare at her. "I don't want protection. I want this to end. I want your cousin caught, arrested, or killed. I don't care which. I want my daughter safe. I want my life back." Murillo's expression was pained. "Heather, make it happen," she continued, staring him down. "Or I walk into the nearest FBI office and tell them everything. Your family, your cousin, all of it. And if that makes me a liability," she looked around the room, "then kill me. But you leave Araya out of this. Rosa takes her somewhere safe, somewhere far away from all of you, and she gets to grow up normal. You'd trade your life for hers." It wasn't a question. In a heartbeat. Murillo stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned to his men. "Find Alessandro. I want him alive. We end this. Now. If you can't stand greedy people who destroy a whole city for power, hit like." Only villains relate to that mindset. The first time Heather walked into a Lucchese family strategy meeting, every conversation stopped. 12 men in expensive suits sat around a mahogany table in the safe house's fortified conference room. Maps of New York covered the walls. Phones and tablets cluttered the surface. These were the copos, the underbosses, the men who controlled everything from the docks to the Diamond District. And they all stared at the waitress from Harlem like she'd wandered into the wrong building. Vincent stood. "Boss, with respect, this is family business." "She stays." Murillo didn't look up from the financial documents he was reviewing. "Heather has tactical insight we need. She sees things we miss." The scarred man, Carlo, leaned back in his chair. "What tactical insight? She's a civilian." "She's killed 2 of Alessandro's men," Murillo replied calmly. "Which is 2 more than anyone else in this room has managed lately." The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. Heather took the empty chair beside Murillo, her heart hammering but her face composed. She'd learned something in the past week. These men respected fear less than they respected confidence. Even fake confidence. "So," she said, looking at the maps, "tell me the plan to find your cousin." Vincent exchanged glances with Carlo, then sighed. "We've got surveillance on his known properties. 3 apartments in Manhattan, a warehouse in Queens, a house in the Bronx. But he's gone dark. No movement, no communications we can intercept." "Because he knows you're looking," Heather said. "Where would he go if he couldn't go to any of those places? He's got resources. Cash. Connections. He could be anywhere." "No." Heather shook her head. "He's family. Even when family betrays you, There are places you go because they feel safe. Where did you and Alessandro grow up? Murillo's expression shifted. Our grandfather's restaurant. Lower East Side. Closed 10 years ago. Who owns it now? Still in the family. My Aunt Rosa keeps it maintained, but it's been empty. He stopped. Jesus Christ. He went home, Heather said simply. Because desperate people always go home. Carlo stared at her. Vincent's jaw dropped slightly. Murillo pulled out his phone and made a call. 20 minutes later, surveillance confirmed it. Alessandro Lucchese was hiding in the closed restaurant where he and Murillo had learned to make pasta as children. How did you? Vincent started. I'm a single mother, Heather interrupted. I understand hiding in plain sight. After that, they listened when she spoke. Over the next 2 weeks, Heather attended every strategy meeting. At first, the men humored her, the boss's pet project, the civilian curiosity. But Heather had spent years reading people across a diner counter. She knew when customers were lying about tips, when they were planning to skip the check, when they needed someone to listen or someone to leave them alone. Those same skills translated eerily well to reading mobsters. When Carlo proposed hitting Alessandro's men with a direct assault, Heather asked a simple question. What happens to their families when you kill them? The room went quiet. What do you mean? Carlo asked slowly. I mean, you kill 15 guys, you create 15 widows who want revenge. Then your people will retaliate. Then there's. It never ends, Murillo. You said it yourself. 70 years of the same wars, the same feuds, the same families destroying each other. She looked into his eyes. Break the cycle. Right here. Right now. With me. And if I can't, you can. Because you're not the man you were 3 weeks ago. You're the man who sits on my kitchen floor and colors pictures with a 5-year-old girl. Her voice cracked slightly. You're the man who called me family. Who protected my daughter. Who has a conscience again. Don't throw that away for revenge. The silence stretched. Murillo's finger was still on the trigger. Alessandro still knelt between them. And every man in that room held their breath. Then Murillo lowered the gun completely. Vincent. Call the FBI. Tell them we're delivering Alessandro Lucchese and full documentation of his crimes. Attempted murder, conspiracy, racketeering, everything. Boss. Vincent's voice was shocked. We don't cooperate with. We do now. Murillo's tone was final. He looked at Heather. Because she's right. This ends tonight. No more blood. No more war. He turned back to Alessandro, who stared up at him with pure hatred. You wanted to destroy me, Murillo said quietly. You almost succeeded. But the only reason you failed is because of her. He gestured to Heather. A waitress from Harlem who has more courage, more integrity, more honor than either of us ever will. You tried to kill innocents. She saved them. You chose war. She chose mercy. And that's why you lost. This isn't over. Yes. It is. Murillo handed the gun to Vincent. Take him. Make sure the FBI understands this is a gesture of cooperation. We're done with the old ways. As Alessandro was dragged away, still screaming threats and curses, Heather felt her legs give out. She collapsed onto a dusty chair, adrenaline finally crashing. Murillo sat beside her, suddenly looking every one of his 47 years. You just rewrote 100 years of Lucchese family law, he said quietly. I just stopped you from becoming someone you'd regret being. I already am that person. I've been that person my whole life. Then maybe it's time to become someone else. Heather looked at him. Someone Araya can be proud to know. Someone who chose mercy when revenge would have been easier. Someone who broke the cycle. Murillo was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled the crayon drawing Araya had made from his jacket pocket. Wrinkled, carried everywhere, a talisman of a better man he was trying to become. I didn't spare him because I forgive him, he said finally. I know. I spared him because you asked. Because I owe you everything. Because you made me remember what it feels like to be human instead of just feared. Then that's enough. Outside, dawn was breaking over New York City. FBI vehicles were already approaching, lights flashing. The media would explode. The families would react. The entire underworld would shift. Because one single mother from Harlem had walked into the darkness and refused to let it consume the man she'd saved. The war that could have destroyed the city never happened. Not because of violence. Because of mercy. The press conference was held at Federal Plaza, with enough FBI agents, news cameras, and curious onlookers to shut down 3 city blocks. Murillo Lucchese stood at a podium bearing the Department of Justice seal, flanked by federal prosecutors and NYPD brass. He wore a tailored suit, his injuries hidden beneath expensive fabric, his face composed in a way that gave nothing away. But Heather, watching from the side entrance with Araya's hand in hers, could see the tension in his shoulders, the slight tremor in his fingers. This was a man walking a tightrope between 2 worlds, the one he'd lived in for 47 years, and the one he was trying to build. The Attorney General stepped to the microphone first, delivering a carefully prepared statement about cooperation, justice, and the successful apprehension of Alessandro Lucchese and 14 co-conspirators. She spoke of charges: attempted murder, conspiracy to commit mass murder, racketeering, weapons trafficking. Then she stepped aside, and Murillo took the podium. The camera flashes were blinding. Questions erupted from reporters before he could speak. But Murillo raised one hand, and somehow, impossibly, the chaos quieted. 3 weeks ago, he began, his voice carrying across the plaza. Someone tried to kill me. They rigged my vehicle to explode. The plan was precise, professional, meant to leave no survivors and no evidence. It should have worked. He paused, letting the weight of those words settle. But it didn't. Because a single mother walking home from work in the rain saw a stranger bleeding beside a wall and refused to look away. She didn't know who I was. Didn't know what saving me would cost her. She just saw someone dying and chose to help. Heather felt hundreds of eyes turn toward her. She pulled Araya closer, resisting the urge to run. Her name is Heather Morgan, Murillo continued. She's 29 years old. She works at Marco's Diner on 5th Avenue. She has a 5-year-old daughter named Araya. And she saved my life. Not once but twice. The reporters erupted again. Murillo spoke over them. The second time was in her own apartment, when assassins came for both of us. She hid her daughter, grabbed a kitchen knife, and fought beside me. A civilian with no training, no weapons, no backup. Just a mother protecting her child. And in doing so, she protected me. He gripped the podium's edges, his knuckles white. What I haven't told anyone until now is this. The attack that almost killed me was part of a larger plot. 17 people were targeted that night. 17 members of my organization and their families, including children. The plan was to eliminate an entire generation of leadership in one coordinated strike. The plaza fell silent. Even the reporters stopped shouting. Heather Morgan didn't just save my life. She saved 17 others. And by keeping me alive long enough to identify the conspiracy, she prevented a civil war that would have torn this city apart. Innocent people, people who have nothing to do with my world, would have died in the crossfire. Neighborhoods would have become war zones. And none of you would have ever known why. Murillo's eyes found Heather's across the crowd. A waitress from Harlem saved this city. Not with violence. Not with power. But with conscience, with mercy, and with a refusal to let evil happen on her watch. She saw the worst of what my world could become, and she stopped it. She convinced me to choose justice over revenge. To break cycles that have run for generations. To cooperate with law enforcement instead of wage war. He turned back to the microphone. Today, I'm announcing the end of internal conflicts within the Lucchese organization. I'm committing to full cooperation with federal prosecutors regarding criminal activities. And I'm establishing the Eleanor Morgan Memorial Scholarship Fund, his voice caught slightly, named for Heather's mother, who taught her that you don't leave people bleeding in the street. The fund will provide full educational support for children from single-parent households throughout New York City. The reporters exploded with questions, but Murillo was already stepping away from the podium. He walked directly to Heather, ignoring the cameras, the agents, the chaos. I couldn't have done this without you, he said quietly, just for her. You did it yourself. I just reminded you who you wanted to be. Maori. Araya tugged on his hand, oblivious to the historical moment unfolding around them. Are you still coming to my birthday party? Murillo knelt, wincing slightly but smiling genuinely. Wouldn't miss it, Piccola. What kind of cake do you want? Chocolate. With sprinkles. Then chocolate with sprinkles it is. And the image that made every front page in America wasn't Murillo at the podium. It was this, a notorious crime boss kneeling before a 5-year-old girl, promising her birthday cake, while her mother, the woman who'd saved him, looked on with exhausted hope. The fallout was seismic. The Lucchese organization didn't dissolve, but it transformed. Legitimate businesses. Legal consultants. Cooperation agreements. Murillo spent the next 3 months in depositions, trials, and negotiations. Several copos went to prison. Others fled. But the predicted war never materialized. Because everyone knew why. The media called Heather everything from the guardian angel of New York to the mafia whisperer. Documentaries analyzed her actions. Think pieces debated her morality. Churches invited her to speak. Universities offered her positions she wasn't qualified for. She declined it all. Heather returned to Marco's diner, though her manager gave her different shifts to avoid the reporters. She found a new apartment in Queens. Nothing fancy, but safe, with good schools nearby. The scholarship fund Murillo established paid for Araya's education through college. They were comfortable, secure, normal. But the city never forgot her name. People recognized her on the subway. Strangers thanked her. Young mothers approached her in parks, telling her she'd given them hope that one person could make a difference. And sometimes, late at night when Araya was asleep, Heather would stand at her window and look out at the city lights, thinking about the man she'd saved. About the war she'd prevented. About the choices that ripple outward in ways you can never predict. She'd saved one life in the rain. And somehow, impossibly, it had changed everything. 6 months after the press conference, on Araya's 6th birthday, a black SUV pulled up outside their apartment. Vincent stepped out, carrying an enormous chocolate cake with sprinkles. Behind him, Murillo emerged, moving easier now, healing visible in more than just his body. Someone ordered a birthday cake, he said with a smile. Araya shrieked with joy and launched herself at him. Murillo caught her, laughing, spinning her around while Heather watched from the doorway. You didn't have to come, she said when he set Araya down. Yes, I did. I promised. He gestured to the cake. Besides, I owe her. Both of you. More than I can ever repay. You don't owe us anything anymore. You chose to change. That's payment enough. Murillo looked at her for a long moment. The scholarship fund has helped 43 kids so far. We're expanding it citywide next year. Eleanor would have liked that. I think she'd be proud of her daughter. Heather's eyes stung with unexpected tears. I just did what anyone should do. But you're the only one who did. That night, they celebrated Araya's birthday in Heather's small Queens apartment. A reformed mafia boss, a single mother, a little girl who believed the world was good because the adults around her chose to make it so. The legend would grow with time, embellished, mythologized, simplified. But the truth remained beautifully simple. Heather Morgan refused to walk away from a dying stranger. And that single act of mercy had saved not just one man, but an entire city from tearing itself apart. She never sought to be a hero. never wanted fame or recognition or legend. She just couldn't leave someone bleeding in the street. And in the end, that was enough to change everything.